So as earlier I said, warehouses is a place where you store goods, and we have different types of goods. Where we have work in progress goods, we have raw materials, we have finished goods, and finished goods are goods that are in their final stage of production. Then we also have other materials which are spare parts, normally referred to as material repair and operation, where these are items or spare parts that are required during production, maybe to fix a default machine or to replace another spare part in the machine so that the machine can keep on running. So these are placed in a warehouse. Then the function of storage can be carried out successfully with the help of warehouses used for storing the goods. So when you look at these companies that are doing good, for example, companies like DHL, companies like maybe Bidco Africa, Kappa Oil, they've organized their store in a way it can easily ensure effective production or flow of materials in and out of the organization. If you get it right the first time in your store, then it means you never go wrong in terms of operations within your organization. And that is why different stores like Nakumat and Uchumi, they were able to go down. Because as much as they're saying it is the issue of economic transformation, you also have issues of maybe poor planning of materials in their warehouses and things like that. So as companies, you also need to ensure at the end of the day, you organize and plan your warehouses more effectively so that customers, when they come to your store, they are able to get all the materials they require very easily without every time telling them hakuna. You know, that is a very bad notion. And once you lose one customer, you can never find another customer. So these are typical example or a picture of a warehouse. And all these are called shelves, or some people might say bins, depending on how you look at it. Then we have the gangways. The gangway need those corridors. Then we have different bins. So this is one bin, this is another bin. So when you are looking at the warehouse, how they arrange items, they normally arrange the items in bins. Once they receive them, they arrange them in bins so that anytime you want to locate an item in a warehouse, it becomes very easy because you just place the bin number in your computer or the warehouse management system, and you'll be able to locate that item, the specific location of that item in the warehouse. And remember, when you're in a warehouse, you need to label the warehouse for purposes of safety. And when you look at the first picture, you realize that we have some metals there that have been painted yellow and black. That is a safety measure in a warehouse. You can also look at the lines where, in case you have these material handling equipment like the forklifts, like the hand jack, like the cranes, it becomes easier for you, like the trolleys, it becomes easier for you to be able to move in and out of the warehouse and to avoid accidents. The other thing that you need to realize is that in the gangway is bigger, where machines can enter and come out anytime. Then when you look at maybe other features like maybe mirrors, you have the concave mirrors, where it becomes easier for you to be able to identify a person who is coming in an opposite direction so that you don't hit those people. So maybe I can ask you a question. Have you ever been to a warehouse before? I believe you have. What are some of the features that you see?
Yes. Like the forklifts.
Yes, forklifts.
what are they called? Trolleys.
The others. Then we also have fire exits where, in case of an emergency, you know where you can run to. Fire assembly point,
Yeah.
know where you can run to. Then cameras for purposes of safety in the warehouse. It becomes very, very easy. So what are the functions of a warehouse? What are the functions of a warehouse? The first function of a warehouse is storage. That is the major function of a warehouse. You are storing your surplus as you wait for demand. Remember, demand is not automatic. You might be in a manufacturing industry and you produce mass production, but it does not guarantee you that because you produced in mass, that the customers are going to buy those products. Sometimes you require a lot of patience for customers to be able to buy your products. So it's never a guarantee that when you produce more, customers are going to buy. The other thing is the issue of price stabilization. Remember, we are talking about surplus. And when you have surplus in place, what happens to the price? When you look at economics, you find that when the supply is high, the prices will always go down. But are suppliers willing to supply at lower prices? They are not willing to supply. Therefore, what they normally do is to hoard those items so that they wait for prices to be stable. Suppliers always want to supply when the prices are high, so that at the end of the day, they can be able to get profits. Then we have issues of price stabilization. We have talked about price stabilization. There is something called utility.
Will still come back.
So there is something called time utility. And when you have a warehouse in place, you'll be able to save time. And utility, we are talking about satisfaction. For example, if you want to produce bread and you have flour in the store, you won't waste time. Just go to the store and pick what you want. Another function of the warehouse is risk bearing. Remember, if you don't put your risk bearing,
okay,
it is not displaying on your screen.
Let me try. I had just a moment. It's there.
Okay. So when you're talking about
risk bearing, yeah.
Imagine if you don't place your items in a store. Maybe you have placed them in an open space where each and every person can access. Sometimes employees tend to steal those items. They can also lose value, or sometimes they can get catch fire. So it is always important to build a warehouse and to be able to minimize such risks, like the risk of theft, deterioration, and others. So we are saying another one is financing. So you can use the items in the warehouse as a form of collateral when you want to get money or loan from a bank, so that at the end of the day, you use what you have to get money that you don't have. The other thing that is very important is grading and packaging. Remember, when you receive items in a warehouse, you normally receive them in bulk, in huge quantities. It is very important, therefore, when you are in a warehouse, you can decide to repackage those items or grade them in different sizes for purposes of convenience or for purposes of moving them from one location to another. So what are the benefits of a warehouse? Remember, the benefits and the function are more or less the same, but it is also important to understand. If you have a warehouse, what do you benefit from it? Number one, it allows for regular production. At any given time, you can be able to produce items without maybe stopping your production process. Then we have what is called production time utility by bringing the time gap between production and consumption. So warehousing provides time utility by reducing the time gap between production and when those items are going to be consumed by the customers. Then we have what is called acts as a store for surplus goods which are not needed immediately. So if you are producing and you don't need the items to be used immediately, you can always store them in your store. Price stabilization we've talked about. Then allows for minimization of risks by providing safe custody of goods. That one we've said. We've also talked about packaging and grading, and we've talked about source of financing. So what are the types of warehouse that we know? What are the types of warehouse that we know? We have 5 major types of warehouses that we know. In summary, you can write them down. The first one is a private warehouse. Hope you are writing some notes, Anto.
Yeah.
So the first one is a private warehouse. Number 2 is a public warehouse. Number 3 is a bonded warehouse. Number 4 is cooperative warehouses. Cooperative warehouses. And the last one is distribution centers. Distribution centers. So let's start with the first one. Private warehouse. Private warehouse. So private warehouses are warehouses that are owned by individual firms for purposes of ensuring that there is flow of production or movement of those items in and out of the warehouse. A good example is a warehouse for Naivas supermarket. Naivas is a retail chain, and because they want to always ensure that their customers are satisfied, they have a central warehouse where they place their items, their surplus items, so that in the event customers demand those items, they can always get them and transport them to their various branches. Another good example is a manufacturing firm. For example, Nairobi Bottlers or Coca-Cola Company is a company that deals with beverage. In that event, therefore, they always store their raw materials in their private warehouses where they require raw materials for production. They can always get them. So we have advantages and disadvantages of private warehouses, but those ones are in the set of notes that I've given you. You will be able to read them, and in case you don't understand, we can discuss. The second category is a public warehouse. A public warehouse is a warehouse that is owned and managed by the government or semi-government bodies. And private firms can be able to rent these warehouses for purposes of storing their items. So we have these smaller organizations that they have a lot of sales, but they do not have space to store their surplus. They can be able to hire the services of government warehouses, where at the end of the month, there's a certain amount of money that they have to pay. An example is there's this company, it's in industry area. I can't remember the name, but it is an example where Uchumi used to be those years. Just a minute, let me stop, then we come back.
Okay.